On the 9th of July 2004, 21-year-old Leigh Matthew had been abducted from her university. This created an emotional roller coaster for her and her family when a greedy man had given them hope and thereafter ripped it away from them. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about the Leigh Matthews murder case. This murder case was in 2004. It created headlines all over South Africa. It was one of the worst cases at that time, and it didn't take a long time for her to get justice on her case. So today I'm going to be telling you what I have learned on this case while we do our makeup. All the products that I'm using will be listed in the description box. My links just don't want to pick up. I don't actually know why this is happening, but I will try and sort it out today. So let's just hop into the story. So guys, Leigh Matthews was a beautiful blonde student. She wanted to become a chartered accountant and she studied at Bond University in Johannesburg, Sandton. She was the youngest in her household. She had her mom Sharon and her dad Rob and a sister Karen. Her dad was an entrepreneur and I think the mom was a stay-at-home mom. There was no mention about the mom and what she actually does. So I'm guessing she was a stay-at-home mom. And she had a sister Karen. Leigh's dad was a successful IT entrepreneur. It seemed like his business was going good. So I think this was where everything started getting initiated. It was when the kidnappers started doing a background story about her and their finances. On the 8th of July, the Matthews family threw Leigh a party. It was a little party because they planned to continue celebration on that Saturday as they were going to host her a bigger party. She asked for the theme to be Pirates of the Caribbean, so all preparations were going mainly to that. They chose to celebrate the party with friends and family. It was just a few family members and a few friends of Leigh's from college, so it was a really small party that they actually had. Later that evening, when Rob and Sharon decided to call it a night, they gifted Leigh a Tanzanite ring. It was said that she loved jewelry, so she was very, very careful when it came to precious things like this that came from her parents. So she was really excited and the family went to bed, not realizing that was the last time the family would go to bed together. The next morning, Leigh woke up and she was ready to go to university. She had jeans on, she had a rust sweater, and she had a denim jacket that she pulled over. She then took the ring that her parents gave her the night before and she put it into her pocket because she was scared and she didn't want to lose it. She then hopped into her car and left for university. She attends the university in Johannesburg called Bond University. What was really sketchy about this whole thing was that Bond University closed down the very same year after this whole incident really happened. So in 2004 December was the last time that Bond University was actually open. So Leigh drove to campus and she gave in her student card at the gate so that she could access the parking lot and park her car. According to sources, it said that Bond University was very secure and very safe, so parents could allow their kids to be on campus without any fear. Leigh then planned to meet two of her friends at 11 o'clock as they were going to Benmore Shopping Center to go and get a gift for another friend of theirs. A few minutes later, Leigh then realized that she had her mom's credit card with her. So she messaged her mom and told her this is what happened. Her mom said, okay, I'll fetch her mom said, okay, I will fetch it from you at 10. At 10, Leigh's mom arrives and she calls Leigh and there was no answer. So she just thought Leigh's caught up in college and she must be stuck in class. So she didn't worry. She sat and she waited into the car. She then tried to call Leigh again and there was still no answer. Eventually, she started asking around. And one of Leigh's friends said no, they didn't see her. Another witness said that they saw her but with an unknown person. So the mom started getting worried. That was when she called Rob, Leigh's dad. And then he said, no, it's nothing to worry about. Leigh must be caught up. So the mom waited a little more and then she called Leigh again. When she called Leigh this time, it wasn't Leigh who answered, it was a man. This time it was the kidnapper. This guy claimed that he had kidnapped Leigh and that he wants money from them. Eventually, Sharon, Lee's mom, thought that this is just something petty, that Leigh is pulling a prank on her. It took her some time to realize that this is not actually a prank, this is something real. That was when she got off the phone with the kidnapper and phoned Rob immediately. Rob was at work, and when questioned Rob, he said his wife called him and he thought that his wife was just going to tell him that she needs some supplies for the birthday, or the birthday is coming up, and something related to the birthday. He said in his last nightmare he never expected. He claimed that even on his worst days he would have never imagined something like this would come from his wife. Once Rob got off the phone with Sharon, he contacted Lee's phone. It was at this time when Rob realized this was something serious. When Rob got onto the phone with the kidnapper demanded a ransom of 300,000 rand. Without any hesitation whatsoever, he hopped in his car and he went straight to the Standard Banks and started removing money out of his account. He didn't think twice, nor did he think anything further than his nose. He just hopped into his car and he went straight to go and get the money from his account. He went to a few branches because certain branches didn't have the amount of money that he actually wanted. So he just hopped in his car and he went. Later, Rob decided to get in a private investigator. He got a private investigator who then told Rob, like, it is essential that we contact the police. With Rob's hesitation, he just decided no, he doesn't actually want to. So eventually they did call up the police, and they eventually did meet the policeman, and he arrived at the petrol station where the private investigator and Rob were. The policeman that arrived at the scene was Dion Shippers. Please excuse me if I'm saying this name wrong, but I will list it up here in the video. Dion suggested that Rob tell the kidnapper that he only could come up with 50,000 in cash. Eventually, Rob called the kidnapper and told him this is what is happening and he could only come up with 50,000 rand, and how does he want to go about doing this. The kidnapper then made mention of the fact that did not involve the police and he will not hesitate to kill Leigh, so Rob must definitely not involve the police. The kidnapper then told him where the drop-off would be. It would be at the R558 off-ramp near the Crossmere Toll Plaza. So from what the police did deduce a conclusion that this guy is experienced in what he is doing. He's like, knows what he's doing. He's not somebody who's a first timer. So they were living by that this guy knows what he's doing. He's watching all their movements, so they cannot just hop and move. So the drop-off would be at 8 p.m. on that Friday. It was made mention of the fact that Leigh would remain unharmed and nothing would happen to her provided he gets his cash. So guys, I'm not sure if I said that he actually did agree for the 50,000. Later that evening, Rob went to get his daughter back. He had a policeman hidden inside his car, and 1 kilometer before the drop-off, he decided to pull over in the side of the highway and let the policeman out. He didn't want to take any risk of losing Leigh at that particular time, so he just decided to pull over in the side of the road and let the policeman out of the car. Eventually, Rob drove off, and he was so nervous that he drove past the drop-off area, and eventually the kidnapper got so mad at him and told him a whole lot of nonsense. He literally lost his cool at that time, and it was at that time when Rob realized that the kidnapper had an accent. Eventually, Rob jumped off the highway to the off-ramp and went back to the drop-off point because he drove past it as he was so nervous. So he then stopped at the drop-off area When he stopped at the drop-off area, that was when he saw movement. It was really dark, but he noticed some type of movement, so he rolled his window down. The kidnapper told him, throw the money out and drive off. As told, Rob did the exact same thing. He drove up really slow because he initially thought that the kidnapper is going to tell him where his daughter actually is, but it so happened that the kidnapper didn't phone. Rob then tried to call Leigh's cell phone and it was switched off, so he decided to wait. He kept on calling. He called approximately 6 times and there was still no answer. So eventually, 15 minutes later, he decided to check on his own phone, maybe to see if there was actually any messages or anything on his phone. But there was literally still no details or no messages from the kidnapper. At 23:25 was the last time that Rob actually made a call, and there was still no availability of her. The policemen then formed a task force of 15 people in order to find Leigh. They set up a joint operation with the Johannesburg police station to try and get any information about Leigh. This task force was trained on how to act with emergencies, how to act if a phone call comes through, how to process everything, as well as track down every type of movement that was actually going to be taking place. They were trained for hostage negotiations as well as being trained on how to speak to a kidnapper and how to find out what the kidnapper's intentions actually are. They set up everything, but there was literally no call that actually came through from the kidnapper. On Saturday, Leigh's parents found them giving a speech to the media telling them about what exactly happened rather than celebrating their party with their child. Her parents spoke to media saying exactly what the kidnapper had told them. He also spoke about how the kidnapper had lost his cool, and the kidnapper said he was actually from Libya but had an Indian accent. Rob told the media that the kidnapper also lost his cool at one stage, and that was when he found out that he had an Indian accent. He also pleaded to the kidnappers through a journalist saying, please let her go. 40 hours after Leigh's abduction, the Matthew family found themselves doing another press conference, and this was when Rob just started losing his cool. He didn't know what to do. He just started losing his cool. He made mention of the fact that who does this to other people and why do people do this? The task force then created a tip line for Leigh, and it just started exploding. There was a number of tips that started coming through, as well as psychics even giving their knowledge on what they feel and what they think about the case and what they think that's actually going on. But every tip that police followed went in vain. They eventually increased their task force from 15 to 150 people, and they started working a day and night onto this case. The tip line was open 24 hours and it rang almost 24 hours. According to police, they said that it just was ringing consistently. There was no space or no gap. The phone was just ringing consistently. Rob and Sharon were at the police station almost 24 hours a day. They just left to go and get some sleep and come back now and again. Other than that, they were at the police station. Police said that their aim was just to get their daughter back and just allow them to move on and move ahead in life. According to cell phone location triangulation records, it said that Leigh was in the Walkerville area at that time. Police then sent out helicopters. They sent out search teams to go and actually look for Leigh, but there was literally no one or no evidence or no trail of Leigh anywhere near the Walkerville area. On the 21st of July, 12 days after Leigh's murder, a thatch roof businessman was doing some repairs in Walkerville and he discovered the lifeless body of Leigh. He then ran back to the business and then called out the police. The police created a 50-meter barrier so that no one could enter, no one could go to that area and tamper with anything. And they checked out Leigh's lifeless body. Her body was in the early stages of decomposition. She had been shot 4 times. There was no blood in the area. It was later determined that obviously the killing did not happen there because it was too clean. There was no mess, no blood, or anything of that sort in this particular area. Later that day, Rob and Sharon had received the devastating news about what had actually happened with Leigh. And the next morning, they had to face an article that said that if Rob had paid the full amount of money, he would have had his daughter back. The previous task force was then asked to pack up and leave, and from a negotiating case, it turned into a murder case. The police followed up every possible lead that they were getting. The first break that they actually took was on the 21st of August. They worked 7 days a week and tried to solve this case. So guys, you may have been wondering where Leigh's car was because she did leave it in the morning. Her mom later realized that the car wasn't in the parking lot when she actually got to the campus at 10 o'clock that day. It was very much later that the mom actually realized where was her daughter's car at that time. There was so much of pressure onto this case from the public, from the media, that so the case was then handed to someone else, Captain Pete Balefeld. So on the 24th of August, Captain Pete jumped onto this case and he decided he's not going as per routine. He just went straight to the crime scene. After he went to the crime scene, he went to visit the university. This was when he realized that Bond University was actually a really safe place, and Leigh was also a very safe girl. She was a girl who always took precautions. She was very safe. Hence, he came to the conclusion that she was kidnapped by someone she basically knew. She knew who her kidnapper was, and that obviously they got into her car together and they drove off. Captain Pete then decided to start putting things together. This was when he realized that it was somebody from the university that had taken Leigh away. It was somebody from there who was involved in this whole thing. So this was when he started digging into the university and started finding out all the people with Indian accent. Whoever had an Indian accent, this is when he was doing a thorough back story about them, finding out their information, finding out who they actually are. And this was when he had come across a Donovan Moodley. Donovan Moodley was 24 years. He had joined the campus at the beginning of the year, just the year 2004 itself. He had lived with his parents and he had been working for somewhere in finance for about 3 years, and he was caught for some type of fraud. The company that he worked for didn't have much evidence on the fraud that Moodley had actually committed at that time, so there was literally no case that they could actually file against him. The captain then realized that Donovan may have been with the very same location as compared to Leigh at that time, so he checked in all the areas where Leigh could have been. On a hunch, he decided he's going to check the motel kind of areas to see if he actually checked in or if he was there or if he actually was in the area near. He went to check all the Formula One hotels, and to his surprise, Donovan checked in there on the 6th, paid for 2 nights, and checked in with his own name, his own ID at that time, and he stayed there for 2 nights, and then he booked a further 2 nights. So he checked in on the 6th of July, and he then checked out on the 9th of July. So he stayed there from the 6th to the 9th at the Formula One hotel, and he paid by his credit card. My dude is rich. Well, his greatest mistake in this case was when he actually used his credit card. When Captain Pete checked his records of his credit card, he then saw the large sum of transactions, large sum of payments that were paid into his credit card because he was in a little bit of debt. On the 15th of July, he made in a deposit of 17,000 rand. On the 27th, he made two deposits. One was 14,000 and the other one was 4,000 rand. When Captain Pete was checking everything on his name, he found that there was a bike, a Ducati bike. There was a Ducati bike that was actually gone in for repairs that costed 34,000. When Captain Pete went to the area when Captain Pete went to Ducati to find out what exactly happened to the bike, they found out that Donovan had told them that he does not have enough money to pay them anymore because there was a deal that went sour and that he just did not have enough funds to pay for what exactly is wrong with the bike. They said that Mudley did come to consensus with the fact and dropped their prices down since that he was a regular customer. So from 30 plus thousand, they dropped it down to 16,000 rand. And according to sources, it said that Mudley was on a shopping spree after the whole incident about Leigh Matthews' murder case. The whole ransom money and everything, it seemed as if he was on a shopping spree. It was said that he bought expensive shoes, he bought designer perfumes, he started being really expensive. He started doing really lavish things with his money. He even spent 1,000 rand at a dealership, as well as he went with friends to a place in Durban, and the trip was fully funded, as well as he proposed to his girlfriend on a yacht. The ring that he proposed to her with was later confirmed that he used it with the ransom money. Leigh's car had then been discovered and it had been found with 2 lotto tickets in the car, and it had tape, and there was duct tape in the car with Donovan's fingerprints on it. Captain Pete did have sufficient evidence to arrest him, but he still felt like he needed to stake him out, and he had so much more information with call records, surveillance, and things like that that actually could tie Donovan to the case, but he wanted a more solid case. So he decided to stake out Donovan for a little bit so that he could actually get what he's looking for. Donovan had been on the phone with his friends a lot after the kidnapping had occurred, and there was some of his other friends that Captain Pete had checked out that actually tied one of his friends to the drop-off point of where the money had been dropped off. There was his call records at that particular place at that time. Now, this wasn't just Donovan, this was his friends as well. What was more confusing for Captain Pete was that Leigh's body was found 12 days later and was in the early signs of decomposition. According to post-mortem report, it said that Leigh had been killed very same day after she was kidnapped. So on the 9th, she was actually killed. So it got him checking her body. So it got Captain P checking her body, and he found that she had frostbites on her feet, indicating that she was kept in a freezer or something really cold for those few days. So it was obvious that somebody else was involved, but they weren't sure. They couldn't find out who was actually involved. They then found out that Donovan had a friend who had a morgue, and they checked out almost every single area of the morgue, and then they found out that she was literally not kept anywhere near there. There was no evidence of her, any traces of her being in the morgue. On the 4th of October 2004, Donovan Medley was arrested on the charges of Leigh Matthews' murder. The first thing that he told Captain P was, "What took you so long?" He knew that he was going to be arrested because he saw the amount of attention that this case brought to the media. So he knew that he was going to get caught. And as they were handcuffing him, he literally just stood there and shook his head. He confessed to the crime almost immediately, but saying that nobody else was involved. He said Leigh and him did have a conversation before he actually killed her. He said that they were in the car, and then she asked if she could go to the toilet, and there was bushes right there. So he told her that she could go there and pee, and that he shot her while she was over there. He put 4 bullets through her. He claimed that he had gotten scared because the media was giving this case so much of attention, so he had to put her away. He later then showed police where he had burned Leigh's clothes that she was wearing, and that where he burnt her car keys, her cell phone, and all the other things that she had on her. He then gave police the ring. He then told police that he had a Tanzanite ring that Leigh had said that her parents had bought for her birthday. So he had that with him. The captain then said that this was lies. He said that this was not exactly what happened and that Donovan is lying through his teeth. He's saving somebody else, because it was obvious that Leigh was not shot while she was sitting down to pee, nor was she killed at that specific spot. She was killed elsewhere, and she was in a really cold place for a few days. So the police was definitely not believing his statement. They felt that he was taking the rap for everything that actually happened. They said that Leigh did have a gash to her head, as well as she had been struggling with a knife. There was a bit of activity that she had been hurt with a knife on her body, and obviously did not come from her parents. Woodley then pointed out the location as to where he burnt all of Leigh's clothes and where he burnt everything of hers, and he was then taken back to go and get the ring from his house. This was when he asked police for a few minutes so that he could actually speak to his parents. And police then found letters that he had written to his fiancée, to his parents, about what exactly he had done. And when police gave him that minute, he just fell to the ground and started asking for forgiveness. And when his mom realized that, his mom said that she was literally praying for Leigh's family to heal from what they're actually going through, not realizing it's her own son that had put them through that. She just never expected that her own son would actually do that. They had a whole different version of him. They didn't know that he had this type of personality in him. They didn't know that he was living two lives. Donovan then stood trial in 2005 and he pleaded guilty. His trial lasted only 2 days. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison, and the Matthew family were pleased, but they still felt that other people were actually involved in this whole thing. Rob then expresses how his family lost their loved one, and when Donovan did stand trial, it was when his parents had to face Leigh's parents. The parents did tell them that it was not actually their fault, and they were also sympathizing with them because they had also lost a child. In 2010, Donovan then tried to have an appeal because of the length of his sentence, but he was denied. They didn't even think twice and they just denied him. In 2010, Captain Pete published a book and it was actually a success. He also made mention of the fact that he feels that this was not the first case that Donovan and his team had. He also saw receipts of 92,000 previous to this, and he feels that this obviously could have been a case where parents didn't come forward about this, or people didn't come forward about this case, and he tried to hit it lucky this time, thinking he was going to get 300,000 from the Matthews family. Captain Pete also made mention of the fact that this was definitely not a one-man crime and it was more than one person that was actually involved. He says he doesn't know why Donovan didn't want to give up his friends. He could have used that as collateral to reduce his sentence, because he did eventually appeal for a sentence, but he didn't. So he says he literally didn't understand why he didn't want to give up his friends. These parents have now started a fund in her name, like a whole type of trust fund, to help people overcome kidnappings, help people overcome traumas that they have actually experienced. So guys, what is your take about this case? Do you guys know anything else? Have I missed out any information? I'd like to know what you guys think about this case. So guys, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. This was the Leigh Matthews case that took place in 2004, and we were robbed of a beautiful chartered accountant in South Africa. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to tap that subscribe button, give me a like, and leave me a comment. I'm out, guys.